you talk about black women, hey, we haven't had it this bad in a long, long time.
So I'm thinking about her and about the generations of women, black women, history have paved the way for this moment tonight.
Hello, hello, friends, and welcome. I am so happy that you are here. My name is Shannon Stott, and you are here at the Fierce Vulnerability Summit, a conversation about and a celebration of colored girls' truths, trials, and triumphs. Tonight, we explore what it means to advocate for mental health with fierce vulnerability, and I am so glad that you are here. It's a very important conversation to be having. Sophia Casey has written a book about the strength of Black women and how they move through and relate to the world. Tonight we get to connect with amazing people who are helping Black women and Black people, us, move through the world by keeping their minds healthy. Sophia, who has served for more than 30 years as an agent of change for followers around the world, has been featured in Success Magazine and on Fox News and Sirius XM Radio, who is a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation, as well as the director of First Impressions, a task force for a former vice president of the United States. Well, she brings us together tonight to remember that we must not only be fierce and vulnerable, but we must be vulnerable enough to take time and care of ourselves. Please welcome Sophia Casey.
Hello, hello, hello. Beautiful, 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 powerful people. Thank you again for being here. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I want to just slow down. I've had a very hurried day, but I want to slow down in this moment and connect with you and say again, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for your contribution to this book, Fierce Vulnerability, debuting as Amazon's #1 new release for dramas and plays by women. I am grateful for that. I'm mostly grateful, however, for your willingness to practice fierce vulnerability every day, every day. I know that our country and our world is going through a lot. And I want you to know that I am grateful that you continue to give it a swing. One more try, one more try. I know that many of us have been knocked down over these past 16, 18 months, and yet we get back up again. I want you to know that every panelist here honors you, honors you. My request for tonight in tonight's conversation is that you are in partnership with me and in partnership with all of the panelists here in keeping this a safe and sacred space. There will be things shared tonight and that are very raw, very real, and very authentic. I invite you to be a part of the conversation. I invite you to also practice vulnerability. And again, my request is that you honor this space as safe and sacred. I want to share a poem that I happen to see this. Well, nothing just happens, right? There are no coincidences, but I saw this online and it literally just grabbed at me. It pulled me. And so I wanted to share it with you. I think it's a great backdrop for the conversation that we're going to have tonight. The author is Ijeoma Umebinyuo, and I'll make sure that I post it on social media as well so that you can support this sister. We soaked the body of our sister in a salt bath, and we washed her until her skin was breathing again. We held the body of our naked sister as she wept. They told my sister she was too broken to be loved. We held a mirror before her until she saw her God staring back at her. We gathered. We took shifts. We walked into the house, and while our sister wept, we poured honey on her wounds. We listened and never stopped her while she wailed, tearing at herself. We alchemists making prayers out of poems. We took turns bringing her light to her. I am sorry you cannot come in. You cannot come in. My sister is not accepting visitors. My sister is healing. And that's what we'll be talking about tonight. And so please, I request that you share this with people that you know could use this level of support that we're going to offer tonight. And I'll come back later and do some more reading from Fierce Vulnerability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you have just gathered us here together. It is not just me. It is not just you, Sophia. We have a whole team of people that you have gathered so that we can have this amazing conversation. Those people that are joining us tonight are Denise Relf. Denise Relf is a trauma healing coach and the founder of Never Stop Growing Coaching and Consulting, which helps clients achieve their personal development goals by supporting transformational changes that identify and remove barriers to their success. Please welcome Denise Relf. We also have Dr. Dana Hubbard, who is the owner and chief operator of Vitality Health and Wellness, LLC. She is a professional licensed clinical social worker who has serviced veterans, women, children, and the Black community. Please put your hands together or fingers together on the keyboard for Dr. Dana Hubbard. We also have Dr. Stephanie Brown, who is a practicing physician and certified life coach who has made her mission to support high-achieving women who are ready to amplify their voice, increase their impact, and make their place as one of the only ones at the table. Count for themselves and the others coming behind them. Please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Stephanie Brown. Thank you so much. We also have Fitzroy Smith, who is a scholar and burgeoning theologian. His commitment to the mental health concerns of his community continues to grow. Under Footprint LLC, a mental health agency, Fitzroy is devoted to providing mental and behavioral support to children in an affordable and professional capacity. Thank you for joining us, Fitzroy. And we also have Lakeisha Hay, aka Keisha the Poet, recently released her first book, her poetry book, A Healer's Heart, A Poetic Journey from Trauma to Healing, which can be found on Amazon. Her book raises awareness and brings light to the short and long-term effects of trauma while also highlighting the process of healing in a poetic and rhythmic way. Thank you all for being here. Yes, and of course, Sophia Casey. I am Shannon Stott once again. Thank you, Mark, for being here and interpreting for us. We appreciate all of you being here. And we're just going to get started in the chat if you can. This is a question for everyone, but also I want to know from you in the chat, from you, the viewers, what did you do today to support your mental health? What was one thing that you did to support your mental health? And I see Denise nodding. I already see Dr. Dana like, oh yes, this is good. I'm so happy. So I would love somebody to take their self off mute and just let us know what you did to support your mental health today. And let us know in the chat as well.
Well, I could speak first. What I did to support my mental health needs today was to just relax and say no to everything because I know I had this speaking engagement and I wanted my mind to be free and clear for my community.
So one of the things I did is I opted out of a meeting, and I struggled with it for a bit because I really wanted to support my one of my coaching besties, as I like to call my coaching colleagues. But I did what was best for me, and I bowed out. And the way that I was able to do it is I reminded myself of JOMO. So you know FOMO, fear of missing out. So I like to say JOMO, JOMO, the joy of missing out. And so I just kept reminding me, you don't have to be in everything. And so now I feel like I can be fully present. And I'll put in one other thing. I saw an affirmation today that said, I am brave and courageous for trying. And that just resonated with me.
Love that. Well, what I did for my mental health today was I decluttered. I went through boxes, threw away things that needed to be thrown away a long time ago, and just cleared the space and was able to just kind of go in and reclaim that space to create some beautiful and to create something freeing. So that was a great thing to do for mental health.
Thank you. Today, I found someone who I trusted with my own vulnerability, someone that I could lend some of my own hurt, my own concerns to. So this fierce vulnerability, I was able to use today with my own self. So thank you.
So Fitzroy, similar to you, I was vulnerable with a friend of mine. Instead of just ruminating in my own head and trying to go over the best solution, I took it to a friend. I call it dumping it there. However, it was for my release. So I felt good afterwards. And I'm here with y'all now. Let's go.
That's awesome, Miss Denise. For my self-care today, I journaled. So I just put my thoughts on paper, from my mind to paper. That way I wasn't so overthinking about everything. So yeah.
I think today for my own self healing, my own self healing, I definitely stopped. I just stopped and looked outside, took a breath. It was very nice. So I was very happy. I'm very happy right now. Have we all shared? I see some really amazing things. Saying no, yes to decluttering. Thanks, Queen. People are really excited to hear from you, and I am so happy to hear about what people did today. I want to know, now that this idea of saying no is already in our minds, I'm wondering how people can advocate for themselves, especially when it comes to their own mental health, socially and in the doctor's office.
So I'll go first on that. Interestingly enough, I actually had a doctor's appointment earlier today. So I'll kick it off with answering the medical profession first. So one thing I used to struggle with was feeling like I was being a burden by taking up too much time with so many questions. And it's still something that I'm actively practicing. So today was one of those opportunities to practice where the physician, with COVID, we're doing telehealth now. So the physician came on a little bit late and I just had to let her know, I have a lot of questions and I don't want to feel rushed. And I took my time when she shared things that I was unclear around. I know I deserved to have clarity because this is my health. So I made sure that I found that clarity and I asked her, and it took time and I was due. So I advocated that way, and I'll pass it to someone else.
For myself, it's not being afraid of what you may hear on the other side. A lot of times we're afraid of the unknown. And I remember my uncle telling me so many times, he says, an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. So a lot of times I take that into heart. I try to do small things to help to prevent some of the bigger things. But more importantly, don't be afraid of what you may hear on the other side, because it just gives you an opportunity to reset, reassess, and apply the things for better mental health and physical health as well.
Also, I would say just releasing the sense of validation. I think a lot of times we want to feel validated and accepted. And so if you understand that, hey, regardless of what happens, I will continue to be me. I will continue to stand in my truth and what it is I believe in. And when I say no, I mean it. And when I say no, I'm honoring myself, because a lot of times when we say no, or we don't say no to certain things, or we decide to people please instead, what happens is that we end up betraying ourselves. So you have to always remember, before anyone else, the first relationship you have is with yourself, right? So we want to take care of ourselves. And by doing so and saying no to things that do not serve us, we can be on a better path. So.
And I just wanted to chime in also, as a practicing physician, it is very important for you to advocate for yourself. Even when I'm a patient, I realize that I have to advocate for myself, or bring somebody with me who can advocate for me if I'm not in a position to do that. So don't be afraid to bring somebody else with you who can listen to the information. Sometimes it's very overwhelming when you're getting a lot of information, and ask the questions, and ask for what you want and ask for what you need. So if you don't ask and you don't advocate for yourself, they're probably just going to keep moving because they're under a lot of other pressure. So it's okay to advocate for yourself, because they do want to help you. But you just need to help them help you.
I'm wondering, with this idea of helping them help you, are there things that people of color are doing or saying that is leading them not to get the care that they need? And how do we combat that? How do we change our vocabulary?
I don't think that there's anything that people of color are doing. I think that physicians need to be culturally competent. They need to be able to understand people from different cultures that are different from their own. And to put unconscious bias aside. So I think that onus is on the healthcare community. But until the healthcare community catches up to that, then you have to just advocate even a little bit harder for yourself, and make sure that they pay attention to your symptoms. They don't blow it off. They don't say, oh, it's probably just this. Well, but it could also be this. Can you check that for me, please?
Shannon, I can speak on that too as well, as long as Dr. Stephanie. Another big thing in the healthcare community is education. Don't allow a doctor or physician or therapist speak over your head saying that I don't know what that means. Can you bring it down for me to understand? And also, not just settling with diagnosis, understanding the diagnosis and educating yourself, what that looks like for you, at home, at work, and everything, and bringing that to whomever in the healthcare field and telling them these are your concerns, and being able to understand it and speak freely in that setting is very important. Educating yourself.
And I would echo that, and to use our voices if the relationship doesn't work for us. I was working with a therapist for a while, and it took a turn to where it no longer served me. And I was willing to use my voice and say, basically, this no longer serves me, ended the relationship, and actually started working with a new therapist. And the jury's still out, to be determined. and I let the new therapist know also, like, this is it's not just whether or not you're the best therapist, I'm a good patient or for you, but it's also, do you work for me as well? I mean, just like in my coaching business, same thing. I have to make sure that we actually can resonate with each other and there's some good chemistry there. And if not, then do what's best for you, but to use your voice.
Sophia, to chime in as a therapist, we don't take that to heart. We understand. And I'm serious. I tell my people that the first time I meet them at Vitality, it's going to become a time where I may no longer serve where you are and vice versa. But this has to be a space where we can share that freely. And I can assist you along the way in finding someone who can meet that need when you reach a certain point. So I'm glad you said that, because you should do that.
Can you all continue this conversation about the relationship between healthcare provider and person and what that should look like? I feel like we have an idea. There's a stigma, right, as to what that looks like in general. This person doesn't understand me. This person can't help me, and that might be a barrier for us getting help. So can you just continue talking about what it can and should look like between patient and provider?
Yeah, one of the things that as I was listening to Coach Sophia and Dr. Hubbard was so I'm in therapy, and before I found my therapist, I knew, having worked in the social service field for quite some time, I have seen through the eyes of others mismatches. And so the thing that I knew I wanted to avoid was connecting with someone who I didn't really feel was going to be a good fit for me from the onset. I know things happen. However, I really wanted to be mindful of what I was looking for and how to put that out there. And so I decided I was going to interview. You know, I didn't even know if it was a thing at the time. This was a couple of years back. I didn't know if I was really able to. There was a little bit of hesitation around it, and still I jumped forward and said, I'm going to interview my therapist. And so I reached out with a series of questions and to a number of different people. And I said, hey, this is what I'm really trying to get at. And I invited them to speak with me, because not all of them were marketing that they had consultation sessions. So I invited those who were interested to speak with me, and it worked out. I found my match. So I highly encourage everyone, interview your therapist, interview your physicians, because from there I took it to the extreme, and it was my first appointment. I may have to go through insurance. I also want to feel you out. So I have some questions, and I highly encourage everybody to do the same.
I'm just curious, like, what that could look like. What types of questions should we be asking of our therapists or our potential therapists, because they haven't been hired yet?
I guess I can speak on that as a therapist in the room. Denise, that's a good point, Coach Denise, that you brought up, vetting your therapist. That's a newer thing, but I welcome it. You know, I have had a lot of clients that come to me and they want a free consultation. That's what we offer some therapists, a free consultation where you have a 10-minute talk to see what the therapist brings to the table and what the client needs to be able to, you can meet that specifically. So Sophia, a lot of questions I get is, what treatment modalities do you use? What is treatment to you? And for me as a therapist, treatment to me is educating my people. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not going to give you a diagnosis. I want you to know what that diagnosis looked like for you, Denise, at work, at school, at home. So I want you to start learning the lingo so you can come back to report to me so we can do the best work for you. And I also pull from various modalities. I'm not just a cookie cutter, CBT, all these big names. I pull to meet the needs of my client, because everybody is different and there's no cookie cutter approach when it comes to therapy. Another question, scheduling and availability. I'm very honest with my clients. As an owner, I really don't have much time, but when I do allocate the time for you, I will be there to show up for you, and I need the same. So if you miss an appointment, Denise, I might not can make it, tomorrow and reschedule you as fast as another therapist. So those are some questions.
I love that. What I hear in that, honestly, is Dr. D, that's keeping your boundaries and honoring your boundaries. Yeah. Thank you.
Was someone else going to go?
I also think it's almost like having your non-negotiables. When you're dating someone, there's some things you already have in mind, And I believe you need to take those same ideas and same feelings into any relationship that you enter into. And a therapist and yourself, even though it's a professional relationship, it's still a relationship that you have to make sure you honor your non-negotiables. And also to, it's okay to know what you want, but it's better to get what you want. And once you find that match, that there starts the healthy dialogue, and starts a healthy relationship, and that's a road to recovery.
I also wanted to add that trusting your gut, things just feel off. And if they feel off, there's probably a reason why it feels off to you. And even if you've started along the path with a therapist or with a physician, and at some point, maybe after the second or third visit, you don't feel like it's going well, it's okay to change. And it's okay to see somebody else in the same practice. I know sometimes, if you go to a hairstylist, you don't want to see the other hairstylist, but that's okay. Any good therapist, any good physician would be fine with you seeing their colleague if that's a better match for you.
There's a general talk right now, a general theme that you all are talking about, which is taking your mental health into your own hands, really taking a little bit of control. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some other things that we can do that aren't therapy, right? What other things that we can do to make sure that we're keeping our mental health healthy? For instance, and specifically guiding this just a little bit, like religion. How do we bring religion into this conversation?
Well, I'll address that. And many times in the Black church, we find that mental health and your belief in God a lot of times are pitted against each other. But you're no less spiritual if you find support from the mental health therapist. And another thing that we find too is we find people stuck in this place of, does God still love me because I'm praying, but yet I'm still depressed? Is God going to show up eventually because I'm praying and yet I have not found an answer? And what we don't realize is that mental health and support is almost like a relay race. There's sometimes the passing of the baton to the next individual that we all collectively run the race. And many times we feel like we have to run this race by ourselves, and we don't have to. There are people who will run the race with you adequately and help you strengthen yourself until we all cross the finish line. And I'll end with this, that when we cross as a team, we all celebrate and receive the same reward. So that would be my take on where mental health and the church needs to be hand in hand, supporting each other, because we're all in this.
Together. I will finish that. Together is the last word I was going for. So yes, what other things can we do? What other conversations should we be having around this topic?
I think it's good to just understand that they aren't separate. Even biblically, one of the first terms that describes God is a wonderful counselor, right? And so we understand that counseling is so important. The Bible also says to seek wise counsel. Right. So it's okay to seek someone that can help you. It doesn't make you any less saved. It doesn't mean that you don't love God enough to just seek him only. God places amazing people who have gone to school, who are in the place and the position to help you, and seeking that help is okay. And if you'd like, it's okay to also get a Christian counselor, someone who's more specific to your needs, and that'll definitely help. But they're definitely married, and God constantly counsels us every single day. And so just to have that extra help, or maybe you may have chemical dependencies wherein you may need to take some type of prescriptions or whatever it is, that's okay. It is okay. And so I just want to also make that known.
Yeah. I'll also say, so I pray I pray a lot, and I've come to a place where it's barely a move that I make that has not come through prayer and just paying attention to what comes. So, and I say that to connect it back to this idea of taking care of ourselves, our mental health, and so forth. So I feel like therapy is a gift from God. Coaching is a gift from God. So these individuals were blessed with this gift. And if I'm in need of something, then I'm going to pray on it, pay attention to and ask God to show me, hey, what is it that I'm feeling? What am I experiencing? Okay, these are the things that's coming to the surface. Where can I go? And I feel like, I'll Google something. And the next thing I know, it's like, wow, okay, I never heard of this. Let me look some more into it. God, is this where you're telling me to go? Let me ask some more questions if I'm feeling like I'm led to ask more questions. And so my therapist, I prayed on it before I found the therapist. I prayed on it before I even had the idea. I said I knew what I didn't want. And so I prayed, and then the idea of interviewing, and it felt uncomfortable. And yet I still stepped out on it because it came through me trusting that what I get through prayer is a guidance and a path for me to seek out my next level of help. And that's how I found my therapist. It was the idea of interviewing them to figure out the right fit. So I feel like it's all connected because we are all blessed with these gifts.
As a therapist, I tell my folks, the reason why I created the name Vitality for my brand is it's about wholeness. Mental health is just one aspect of our wholeness as human beings. It's important to be mentally intact, physically intact, spiritually and religious. And religion and spirituality are two different things to me. You don't have to have a religious compass to be spiritual. So educating them on that and understanding what it looks like for them. And I can bring the aspect of Christianity into the room if my client welcomes it. And we like you stated, Denise, we identify supports in each aspect. What's your support within your Christian community or whatever religious community? Where's your support mentally, physically, spiritually? What does that look like for you? Because it's a holistic approach. It's not just a one thing. And physically, right, Dr. Stephanie, making sure you're intact there as well and understanding the importance of that when it comes to terms of being mentally sound.
Absolutely. One of the reasons that I love coaching is because I see myself as a healer. And as a physician, I get to do physical healing as well as some mental. But as a coach, I get to bring it all together. So I have the spiritual, I have the physical, I have the mental, I have the emotional, and the social. And we are whole beings. We're not segmented, compartmentalized beings. And so it all works together. And so being able to address all of those areas is great for our mental health and is a wonderful way to kind of look at it. That's how I like to look at it.
I feel like we're coming to a space where we're talking about other people's mental health, how the audience, how you out there can help yourselves. And I'm wondering if all of you can be so gracious as to share some mental health issues that you might be facing and also how you are personally caring for yourself.
Where do I start and how much time do you have? Okay, this might turn into one of my therapy sessions. So I'm going through a lot. As I share very freely all the time. My husband had a stroke and has still 1/3 of a brain tumor and lots of cognitive delays and lots of gaps. So I'm dealing with that. A lot of people don't know, but I have an older brother who has schizophrenia, who I've been the caregiver for a very long time. So it's like that, and then dealing with my own PTSD of having gone through all of this with my husband and gone through all of this with my brother. Like, it's a lot. And I tell you, therapy has been a lifesaver. Like, if nothing else, but to have a place that I can go for an hour that's just about me. I don't have to give something. I don't have to pour out, because as a coach, I'm a coach too. I love my coaching besties up here, Denise and Dr. Stephanie. But as a coach, there's a lot of pouring out, holding space. And same for you all who are therapists as well. And so I tell you, I look forward to my therapy sessions, to just have a space to go and to just be. To just be.
I believe that trauma is real. I'm African American, I'm male, and I'm supposed to be strong. I'm supposed to be able to identify trauma, look it in its eyes and tell it to go away. But there are moments when the trauma jumps on me and I have to ask myself, what do I do now? So for me, when I spoke about earlier being vulnerable to someone you trust, there are people who have some of my deepest secrets, some of my heaviest pains. But I'm so grateful, and I'm more grateful to God that I have a safe space and to put those things to. I remember growing up, I lost my father to addiction. And here I am still dealing with some of the trauma of what that looked like, even though I'm in this current space of life. But it goes to show you that life still happens in spite of the accolades, the companies, the moments. Life still happens. So for me, that's why it's necessary to partner with somebody. Find someone where they put it in their lockbox and they even lose the key on purpose, just so it never gets out. And that's what I make sure that I try to find. But more importantly, I try to be that for someone else. I want to make sure that I'm available, that I can be used. And a lot of times we find places to plug into, but can you be a place that someone else could plug back into? So I want to make sure that my pouring out isn't in vain, but my receiving isn't in vain as well. So that's where I try to find place for my trauma and some of the things that I deal with daily, because there are some moments where I am Clark Kent, and there are some moments when I am Superman.
So in regard to, oh, someone's going to share? Oh, no, that's a question. Sorry. I'm trying to keep up. In regards to my own personal struggles. So I feel like had I not gone through a lot of the things that I have gone through in childhood on up until my adult years, I wouldn't be the coach that I am. I wouldn't have the level of empathy that I have. I wouldn't have the desire to care and to listen in the way that I do. And one of the things that I am so grateful for having the knowledge and awareness of is that I'm still growing and developing every single day. Hence the name of the business, Never Stop Growing. My current struggle is around worth, self-worth. And I realize that all things have levels to it, right? Because I'm like, okay, I finally come to a space where I feel I am beautiful. I can show up in a space like this, bare face, no makeup, no retwist, and feel, I don't know which way that goes, here we go, and feel confident and comfortable. So that was one level. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I'm struggling with worth as it relates to me accepting certain standards from a partner in a relationship, and seeking out these things and being and knowing that I deserve it. I'll go deep on the personal share. I am a dismissive attachment disorder. That's my attachment style. And it's because my upbringing wasn't one where my parents were there. And I started to learn now just how deep that has impacted my own self-worth. And so I'm unpacking that honestly daily. And I'm appreciative for the lessons. And I know that some days I don't even want to deal with the revelations that I'm getting. And yet I welcome it all the same, because I know I keep going higher and higher.
If I can speak next, Sophia, as you stated, we all are battling something, and as Victoria stated, most of us exhibit trauma in some sort, whether it be economical, sexual, physical. We all have some racial trauma that's going on underlining. So for me, as a veteran, I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. I have a traumatic brain injury and depression. But I educate my clients on that. It's okay for me to say that because I learned what that looks like for me and how it works for me in all my areas of life. And I also have to bring vulnerability to my clients that look like me because I want them to know that I'm just as human as they are, and we as people go through things. But we have to be able to feel comfortable and be able to go on this journey collectively so they can get to where they need to be, because I've done my journey and I know what it looks like for me. Denise, as a coach, as you stated, sometimes doing the work we do activates us in our own stuff, right? And when we're activated, what does that look like for you? For Dr. D, it looks like for me, I know I travel. I tell people all the time, traveling is my thing. That's my escape. I'll be on the beach by myself. I don't care where I'm at, but that's where I go at least quarterly for my mental health needs. That's my space for me to be whatever I need to be in the moment. I don't have to be Dr. D. I can let my armor down and be whoever I need to be in that moment. So it just understanding what it looks like for you. And that's the joy of therapy, helping you get to that bottom line and what it looks like, and understanding that the diagnosis does not define you. We're still capable and have the ability to achieve whatever we need to achieve, despite what we're bringing. Just like if it's diabetes or high blood pressure, you're still able to achieve.
I would definitely say for myself, I was clinically diagnosed with depression a couple of years back after a traumatic incident. And so as I've been growing and healing, there are a few things that I see that I've been working on. So for example, I realized that sometimes I struggle with dichotomous thinking, which is like thinking in black and white, right? Thinking, oh, this person, either they like me or they hate me. And so what I do is I have to constantly check myself. So when the thought comes up, I say, no, Keisha, that's not it. They're probably just busy, or they probably have something else to do. And so I kind of become my own therapist in a sense, and I talk to myself that way. And I think as well, if you're in a position where maybe you can't seek a therapist right now, or you don't have a friend, you may be in a lonely space right now, talking to God and also talking to yourself as if you were your own therapist is actually very therapeutic. So just saying, Lakeisha, everything is going to be all right. Remember that this is just a temporary thing, and talk to yourself. Let yourself know that you're loved. Remember, we have a relationship with ourselves. So I would say that's one thing I'm working on. Also, validation and validation seeking, also being able to mentally check whenever that is happening and say, Keisha, you're mad because they didn't text you back, but listen, they could be busy, remember, you got it. You don't need, or if I want to tell good news to someone and they may not respond in the way that I like, I got to be like, Keisha, it's your good news. You have to be happy for yourself, right? Because not everybody will cheer you on. Not everybody will be a friend, but that is okay. Who's meant to be for you will be for you. So just trust the process, trust where you are now, seek the help that you need. Like it's been said, the trauma is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. So we're really, really trying to engage you guys and encourage you guys to take care of yourselves.
I'm telling you, that's tweetable right there. The trauma is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. And I say the healing is your responsibility if you choose it. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to share, I definitely work with therapists and with a coach, and have for many years. And what I realized is that I still have to do a lot of work with my inner child around shame. Having grown up in a household that had severe mental illness, severe alcohol and drug abuse, and learning as a kid to try to people please and put my needs last, to make peace, to make peace. And that's sort of like my Enneagram is the peacemaker. So I have to remind myself that that's not my responsibility, that it wasn't then and it's not now. And sometimes when things are happening, I realize, okay, well, that's my inner child that's crying out. What does she need? So I have to ask her. I say, little Stephanie, what do you need in this moment? And then I give her what she needs. If she needs rest, and a lot of times she acts out when she needs rest, because I am an overachiever. I work hard, I go hard, and when I'm exhausted, she will act out. Sometimes she needs love. Sometimes she needs, different things. So I have to just tap into that inner child and reparent her, because she didn't get a chance to get all of the parenting that she needed when she was an actual child.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Stephanie. I talk about that a lot. Internal family systems, IFS training, is mostly about parts. We have parts of us that's unresolved. So what Dr. Stephanie was speaking about is your inner child probably didn't get their needs met and chose to over accommodate as a result and overextend themselves. So identifying how your child comes up in different aspects of your life. So as you stated, Dr. Stephanie, my child comes up when I'm disappointed in a person, because that was me being disappointed in a few adults that was around me when I was younger, just disappointment. So I too, Lakeisha, talk to myself. I tell people all the time, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to myself. Where I'm talking myself, checking myself. Okay, Dana, what's your problem in this moment? What is it, and what do you need to fix yourself and correct your behavior? So I love it that you all brought that up, and it's important for us to identify how that translates into who we are as adults today.
You're all talking about vulnerability, right? There's a space in us as far as that right there, talking to yourself. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to my inner child, or I'm taking time to pray, I'm taking time to do these things. Those all take vulnerability. And I think that we have built up things that keep us from being vulnerable. And we have this wonderful question. Can someone address why there are so many people in the African American community that are not comfortable with seeking out therapy? Can you talk about that when it comes to and related to vulnerability as well?
Well, I imagine our therapists and medical professionals can speak to this in the extended form. But, I really believe that one of the reasons that Black people shy away from therapy, not just therapy, but getting medical support, is because those professions were used to hang us. Those professions were used to kill us. Those professions were used to keep us back, to harm us, to stop us. So that trauma I imagine that trauma led to this distrust of professionals, this distrust of authority figures. And so I really do think that is a big, big part of it. It's like generational trauma. It's like, can I really trust you? And that's why it was really, really, it was imperative for me to find a therapist of color, a therapist who I could relate to. Didn't mean that we necessarily had the same walks of life and we've experienced the same things, but just having that foundational thing in common, it just really, it had us start at a place that I probably wouldn't have started at if I was working with a therapist who's not a BIPOC. I actually did work with a therapist, a white therapist, for a couple of years, and I noticed that we kept hitting a head at a point like where there are things that I would say that she couldn't resonate with. And so I really do believe that's a big part of it. It's like that generational trauma. It's like, wait, you want me to trust this? Look at our history. There were studies done. We were used for studies, genitalia mutilated. And like, now you want me to trust this profession to actually be able to support me in healing? Whew.
Coach Sophia, yes, and yes. So in regards to my coaching practice, so as a transformational coach, what I mean by that is actually working with individuals to help them reshape how they view things so that they can get the help they need and connect with what's really at the root of their challenges, and then properly plan around that. And when it comes down to seeking out additional supports, whether that be through therapy or something that is health related, when there are talks that are brought up around nervousness from, I find that it's like, okay, well, my parents always said this, or, you know, this happened because my family grew up in the South and they told me we just don't do this. You know, customarily we went to the doctor when something was hanging on by a limb and you couldn't put a shirt around it to hold it together, you know. So having to undo all of that because of the reasons that Coach Sophia talked about is what we're still dealing with. You know, a lot of people will hear me saying the things that I ask to professionals in the medical field and the health field and feel like I'm pushing. And it's because of this discomfort that we still have as Black people around asking too much, seeming needy, or putting your trust in people who you shouldn't put your trust in. And for me, I'm really about just breaking that. And at some point, in order to break it, we got to take a chance and step out on a limb and say, here is my need. This is what I'm going to speak to, and really just hold people accountable to meeting it. And when they don't, knowing how to transition on to someone else who can meet it. That fear is real. So I love to call it out first and say, hey, this is real and it's okay. And you still have a need. So now let's talk about how to work through that fear to get your need met. And I had to first start with me before I can tell anybody to do it.
I also think another approach is if I start this dialogue, what happens in the house, and then we could all finish it, stays in the house. But the problem is what happens if the trauma is taking place in the house? And that's the conversation we don't want to have. So the reason why we don't trust outside of the house is because many times we can't trust what's going on inside of the house. So now you're stuck in between two parallel universes that are colliding because you're still trying to find who to trust. So I think the reason why African Americans, people of color, having such difficulty stepping outside themselves because they've grown up in an environment where trust is fickle. It's attached to something, a need. It's attached to danger. It's attached to some type of compensation. So I believe that if we look at it from a different lens, if we don't trust within ourselves, it's hard to trust from without ourselves.
I like what you stated, Fitzroy. It starts at home, and that's what I was going to state. Our parents or whoever raised us were our first role models. And if we think historically in the Black community, what that looks like, for me, it looked like strong Black women who didn't show you when they weren't okay. Emotions weren't shown, right? If we cried, what they tell you? I'm gonna give you something to cry about. What you crying for? So we couldn't even say when we weren't okay. So how will we be able to translate that now that we're adults to be able to say we're not okay if we couldn't even do that in our home environment where it was nurturing? And to speak on a generational trauma, Sophia, which I speak about all the time, is real, right? It goes back to our ancestors who want to feel slavery. They had to push past pain, physical pain, sexual trauma, all of those things. And then generations later, here we are. And we were raised by the byproducts of those individuals, and we're still trying to figure out what that looks like for us. So decoding the brain of what was role model in front of us as youth is very important. And that's one of the barriers, Shannon, when it comes to receiving help.
You're already going down a path, and you're talking about youth. I'm wondering, can you all just have a more discussion about how to support youth when it comes to mental health? How do we go about supporting them?
So the another thing that I just wanted to bring up as part of this discussion is access. A lot of times as Black people, we don't have access to the same mental health services as other people. So all of those things are true. And when you add up the mistrust and you add up the strong Black woman syndrome, and then you have to drive outside of your community and you may not have a car and the bus may not go there and it's really difficult, then that's another barrier. So that's a systemic barrier that we can all kind of work on, but that's another one that we can't overlook, that affects us disproportionately.
Well, Shannon, I can speak on your question about youth and what we can do. As Lakeisha stated, trauma is our responsibility to heal and not pass on things that don't serve us to our offspring. So I have an 11-year-old son, and he and we talk about emotions. What is it you're feeling? Give me the language. And what do you need in this moment? Okay, Mom, I'm feeling anxious because I have this presentation. Okay, well, helping him identify what that looks like and creating that nurturing environment for him to be able to do so. Unlike when we were younger, I don't know about you all, we were seen and not heard. So I want my son to feel heard and create that space, well, respectfully, that your mother is here to listen and we can navigate through this together as a unit. So I start that at home with my own child and hopefully advocating my family members to do the same with their children.
I was listening to someone who does research in the area of corporal punishment, and how she wrote a book about how a lot of times as Black families, we think that corporal punishment, or we grew up on it and we think that it's okay for our kids. And she was just talking about the negative impact that has. And one of the things that she said is that youth, in terms of violence, because a lot of kids never are able to cry or express their emotions, they may turn to that gun, or they may turn to fighting or something else, because they don't have good coping mechanisms for dealing with that disappointment or that embarrassment or that offense that was done. So if we can, like you said, allow children to express their emotions and give them coping mechanisms to deal with hurt, to deal with pain, to deal with fear, and allow them to cry. Like, it's okay. I remember my kids cried every day, I think, until they were like 11. I'm like, when are they going to stop crying every day? But I let them cry. And I think that is one thing that we can do, just sort of support them emotionally when they're young.
I think what comes to mind for me is the Bible speaks about we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, which we had nothing to do with, but we also overcome by the words of our testimony. There's something about being transparent with your own life that will help someone come out or help someone enter into a situation that they know a little bit more about. And I think in our own selves, a lot of times we try to hide some of our pain, some of our scars, not knowing that the scars still heal, but yet they still tell a story. And that very story could help to unlock the lives of these young people who are begging to find out what, where, when, how, and more importantly, why. So I think our transparency would be a conduit to freedom in a lot of their lives, because that's why social media is so prevalent, because social media gives them transparency. It gives them access. The same thing we're trying to hide is the same thing could probably free them.
Yes.
I love that. You said something that is perfect. We're going to transition because you said freedom. That and called freedom. And I feel like right now is the time for that.
Hey, Shannon, we are struggling to hear you. And I think Denise wanted to put something in. So maybe once Denise does.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to add that as far as youth, a large part of my career was devoted to working with youth. And the thing that I could not stress enough was listening to them like a non-judgmental ear, listening to them. If they're cursing, if they're yelling, however they're choosing to express themselves in that moment, and it feels like an extreme, right? Because it's like, you're the adult and here this child is, this is just my thought, right? Listening to them and letting them express themselves in whatever way that they express themselves. Hear what's behind all of that, and then start labeling it. Because as adults and going through stuff, and the more we work and heal ourselves and come to a certain level of awareness, we can now give that back and say, okay, what you're experiencing right now is stemming from X, Y, or Z. Let's talk about a way to communicate this so that way it's heard on a larger scale. Because now you're listening, you're attending, because you want to attend to whatever the need is as much as you can, and then pass on the tools to help them to communicate as they age and become adults just like us, so that way they don't have to learn the hard ways. It's like, instead of correcting first, listen, attend, and then pass on some jewels and knowledge to them to help them incorporate it into who they're becoming.
I tell you, Coach Denise, I had to work through that. I had to really work through that, with our son Josh, going through so much around his dad's medical setbacks. He had a lot of emotion. And so who was going to get the brunt of that emotion? Mom. And a therapist really supported me around that, like giving him the space to just express himself. Now, I tell you, I had to come a long way, because as you all talked about before, like Dr. D said, the way I was raised, no, children don't raise their voice, and they're not allowed to express themselves in that type of way. And with a lot of prayer and some therapy too, and also just support from my village, my extended village, that really helped me a lot to say, lean back a little bit, Sophia, lean back a little bit, Mom, and just let him speak. Let him speak. And at the same time, putting some structure and some guardrails in place around being respectful. And like you said, Denise, so that I can hear you. And hallelujah, we finally have gotten to that place. 10th grade coming up. So thank you for saying that.
Yes, I also think it's just very important to see the youth individually as who they are. I think a lot of times, especially parents, they tend to see their children as extensions of themselves instead of their own individuals. They have their own likes, they have their own dislikes, they have their own personality. They may be more introverted or they may be more extroverted. All of these things should be taken into consideration and respected and honored, right? Because as a human being, you have your own thing, you do your own thing. So just respect your child as their own individual. Even though they are your child, they are their own individual. And one day they're going to be an adult in this world. And so you want to make sure that you're cultivating that individuality so that they can speak from the heart and speak from a transparent place.
This is a good time, Keisha, for you to read your poem, Freedom.
Okay, great. Alrighty. So hello, everyone. My name is Keisha the Poet, and I am an author. I am a poet. I do motivate, encourage those around me. And so I've been writing for a long time, and I find a lot of passion in writing. For me, writing is a form of self-care, right? And tonight, I would like to share a poem with you. When I wrote this poem, I was going through a lot, and it was definitely a tough moment for me. I felt like the space and the place that I was in was safe, right? But it was really unhealthy, the mental space that I was in. And I think a lot of times we become attached to our trauma. We become comfortable with our trauma. It's better to hold it like a baby instead of giving it up in order to get the help that we need. And so I just hope you guys enjoy this poem. It's called Freedom. My cocoon seemed safe. the evidence of darkness covered with cracks of light. I saw myself wrapped up in the warmth of my own isolation. I was desolate. But through my losses, I thought I finally found a home. I thought this dark, damp sphere of entanglement was my sacred space. To die. I wanted to die. My arms reached out but couldn't stretch far enough. My legs shook from the cold, realizing that I could barely warm myself. My eyes grew accustomed to what seemed to be a prison of my own thoughts. But this place was mine, so I assumed it was safe. Looking above me, searching for something I had lost, something I refused to release. Looking below my sunken collarbone to find chains everywhere. They circled my wrists with precision and slowly tightened the more I moved. The shackles linked together coldly and trapped me to something I could not see, but felt. I had become a slave to my own shame. My guilt moved unassailably like a gust of wind, knocking me back into a hurricane within the universe of my own fears. The stars of deception clinging to me as if they did not want me to see the sun. Yet, I heard quietly in this place the whispering voices of my mother and her mother and her mother praying for me. What manner of self did I deserve to be sought after? Which creator did they believe could blot out the transgressions of my lifeless soul? How could a deity of sorts look beyond his kingdom in the firmaments and see me? Could it be that the God that saved my ancestors from the chains of bondage wanted to free me from my shackles of pain? I looked up as bright light shone through the cracks, its illumination far brighter than I had seen in so long. The force of the light broke through my dark cocoon and enraptured my sinister prison with glorious light. The Savior of the world had come to save me, to free me from this prison and give me warmth again. His presence sweetly rested upon me as he spoke gently into my ears. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will draw a line in the sand for you. And I believe him. My chains are now gone. I can move freely. So I dance and dance and dance, not realizing that this freedom has given me wings. I slowly open them on my back and move ever so gently, becoming accustomed to my new look. Yet, the power of my new appendages did something marvelous, miraculous. They pushed straight out of the darkness and tore open the cocoon I once called home. And so I flew away to the resplendent light of Jesus, now understanding that this prison was not meant to hold me, but to grow me into the butterfly I was meant to be. And so I am grateful, forever indebted to live my life for the one who died for mine. Freedom. Thank you guys so much.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Takesha.
Thank you.
There is a part of your poem, it's a little earlier up, and the line starts out, my eyes were accustomed. Could you find that, or could you recite that one more time for us?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely can. So let's see. Give me 1 second. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm a little nervous, can't find it. But yeah, so I speak about, my eyes becoming accustomed to this dark cocoon because I've been here so long. I've been in my trauma so long. I've been in my pain so long. So it's become a part of me, honestly. And at the time, it was comfortable to be in this space. And I think a lot of times as human beings, like I said, we're okay with not being fully healed because we've learned how to dysfunctionally live that way. We've lived maladaptively in a state of dysfunction, and it has become our norm. And so a lot of times, if you're not in a place of healing and you maybe even meet someone that is healed, they look so different and they don't fit what you would have thought or hoped or what you seek. And so it's so important to heal so that we can attract what is good for us.
Thank you so much. You have so many snaps and so many beautiful poems. And thank you all for listening. As we bring everyone back, I want to continue on this path that we're talking about, the idea of being accustomed to pain, accustomed to tragedy,
Yes.
and the turmoil that can bring. So
yes.
I would love to bring all of our panelists back and talk about what that looks like, and maybe even how we can find our way, how we can see that maybe we are living in a dark place.
Also, guys, I just wanted to say, if you are interested in more uplifting and inspiring content like this, you can follow me at Keisha the Poet on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So, yes. But yeah, let's talk about it, being accustomed to our own trauma and pain. What do you guys think about that, panelists?
I think, sadly, we wear our pain as a badge of honor. It's almost validation, especially for young African American men, when you've been incarcerated or if you're connected to a gang. It gives you street cred. But the problem with street cred is it's only good in the graveyard, because you have to then live with this false identity, because you are still struggling with what you're feeling on the inside. And just to kind of go back to what Dr. D was speaking about when you were young and you started to cry, and then you were cut off on going through the full process of crying, going through the emotions, and then having therapeutic rapport where you begin to level down. If you cut it, that means the process hasn't been fulfilled. So now that you're an older individual, you're missing a lot of the necessary elements to process feelings and emotions. So now you're wearing this pain. And now you've even given the pain a name. You've given it a nickname, and it goes with you everywhere you go. But unfortunately, it's who you start becoming, and you lose all sense of who you really want to be because you find yourself lost in so many different phases of your life. So why do we adapt? Why do we live with it? Why are we carrying it around? Because we still haven't learned how to let it go.
How do we learn to let it go?
Does it ever go? That's something to think about. I know mine will never go away. It will always sit in our subconsciousness. Now, with that being said, yes, it never goes away. But how do you learn how to control that? How do you learn how to let that serve you where you are in life, and not to let it abuse or create barriers for you where you are in life? So being able to identify that is very important when it comes to mental health and being able to be your authentic self. What does it? I tell my clients, I wish it's something, a magical pill to make it all go away, or a light switch to just make it magic. It will never go away. But when it comes up, how do we address that when it comes up is what's most important.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I like what you just said. It sort of reminds me of the shadow self, how we all have those things that
You know it was good.
once oh, once the pain is so heavy that it's standing in the way of you really experiencing joy and experiencing the things that you want out of life, then you're kind of ready to do the work to let it go. And then you need help. You need to find somebody to help you through that process to let it go. But recognizing that it will always be there, that shadow self will always be there, and learning how to integrate it as best as possible. And just realizing that, bringing it to consciousness when you need to, so that it doesn't stay in your subconscious where it's just kind of sabotaging you.
I was going to share that's the work that happens a lot when I'm working with clients. So talking about just how to allow what's happened to you to serve you, and really taking inventory on what that impact has been, right? Because it's one thing to know that a traumatic event took place, and now it's like, how has it impacted you since that time? And what is the goal that you want to, like, how do you see yourself? Where do you want to be? Okay, well, now let's kind of work through that to figure out how to get there. And that's what I'm doing with clients. And I also had to do it with myself. So, I always start with me first to really understand how things work. And I had to come to learn that the things that happened to me, first recognizing how it was impacting my behaviors, and realizing and admitting that some of the things that was happening to me as a result was also part of the behaviors that I was exhibiting, which were connected to my traumas. And that was a hard one. That was a hard one, to admit how you have then not served yourself. When I finally did that a couple of times and realized that this is okay to do, and I didn't see myself as a failure, and I realized there's ways to kind of make these things work for you after you know what it is, then I was able to say, okay, I no longer want to show up defensively. I no longer want to shut down. I no longer want to push people away. I am now going to trust, be vulnerable, and trust that I am able to take this step forward. No matter what other people do, I have to first at least try and allow somebody in and to show up for me. And that was hard. And practicing it a couple of times, then you start to notice the benefits more and more. It wasn't, I used to get skeptical and think, well, this was just in that situation. It's not, but we got to keep practicing that muscle to strengthen it. And so I learned that for myself, and I'm grateful that I'm able to pass that on and see others begin to open up for themselves.
Denise, when it comes to work and trauma, I think you make a valid point. Things that served you to get through heartache, pain, hurt, being guarded, being defensive, pushing people away, being angry, that's a protective stance. That worked for you in certain stages to protect you, no matter where you were with the trauma. If the trauma was in the household, wherever it was, it worked then. But as you age and mature, you realize it can't serve me as a therapist, as a friend, as a partner. I can't be guarded and defensive, because I can't be those things when it comes to intimate relationships, and being that it requires vulnerability. But again, this is the things our brain learned for us to cope when we needed it at the time. So separating those two, that was coping mechanisms. Even though it wasn't positive, that's what the body and the mind needed to get through it. But where you are today, what do you need today, and how that no longer serves who you are?
We're talking about ourselves. I'd love to shift this and talk about relationships and our vulnerability in relationships, but our mental health and how mental health helps and strengthens those relationships.
Now we talking about personal relationships. What we talking about?
We're talking
I'm qualified, Dr. D.
family.
Now, Shannon, I know you're talking about all encompassing all types of relationships, but one thing about Dr. D, I'm real with my clients, and I tell them, look, when it comes to intimate relationships, Dr. D is still working on herself. That requires a lot of vulnerability, and to be honest, I'm still working through that. Currently, probably tomorrow, I'm still going to be working through that, but I'm doing the work to get where I need to be. Because as I stated earlier, the things that help me push through pain can't work when it comes to an effective intimate relationship. Keyword, healthy and effective. That won't work. So identifying that for me, I'm still, Dr. D still working on her. But vulnerability looks different in every aspect of life. And when it comes to relationships, it's a different type of vulnerability. You need to be a best friend, to be a mother, to be a sister, to be a professional woman, a business owner. It looks differently in every aspect of our life. And it's important to identify what that looks like for you and how you can challenge yourself in every area when it comes to vulnerability.
I also think that since we can remember, we all have been walking around collecting things in our bag, from trauma, from pain. We collect. But if you can find someone to help you unpack some of your baggage, to help you kind of look through what you've been collecting and put things in their necessary places, and help you throw out things that need to be thrown out, and help you process what needs to be fully developed. When you find someone to help you unpack, then you found someone special, because that says that they're willing to help you get through some of the very things in your own baggage, as they have even some of their own things in their own. So for me, that's how I look at relationships. Are you willing to help me unpack? And some of the things that I'm carrying, I didn't even mean to carry it. I didn't even mean to pack some of the things that are in this bag. Matter of fact, I don't even know what's in there sometimes because I'm so afraid to look into the bag, because I know there are some things in there I just don't want to face. And if you can find someone who is willing to help you unpack, you found someone special.
That's right. You've been talking about this somewhere. You mentioned finding someone. And I'm wondering, what kind of partner are you talking about? Are you talking about a romantic partner? Are you talking about a therapist? What is the someone?
I believe you said the type of partner I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah. Someone.
Well, I think the beauty of this bag has many different zippers, right? So there's one zipper for my therapist, there's one zipper for a romantic partner, there's another zipper for family members. Even when I travel, when I have my big bag, there's several zippers that gets me to different compartments of the luggage. And what you have to learn is not necessarily which zipper should I go to first, is to know which zipper goes to what relationship. That's the most important. And that's where you find the conflict. Are we unpacking the right things to the wrong people? So once you can identify what goes where, you can better begin to walk into what we look at as healing and what it should look like.
Yeah, I definitely love what you said. That's so true, because a lot of times some people do not have the capacity to hold what it is you have to tell them. And so you may think, oh, because this person is related to me or close to me, that they'll be able to, understand when I tell them something that I may be going through, but they don't have the space, and so it's so important that you understand who fits where, like Fritz said, most definitely. And also asking as well permission before sharing a lot of times is very helpful, just to make sure, because someone may be in their own world or dealing with their own thing. So if you just ask like, hey, you know, I'm kind of going through something. Do you have the time or the moment to talk about it with me? That would be much better than just, you know, saying, hey, let me unpack. Hey, welcome home. You know, let me just put my suitcase right here, sit down in this space. So yes, definitely agree. Thank you.
I love what you said about confronting or talking to your partners. And we have a question here. How do we gently confront and support our loved ones we feel are suffering unknowingly with mental illness?
I can speak on that. I would think the best approach is coming from a place of genuineness, letting them know, you know, how you love them, how you support them, and what it is that you're witnessing from where you are. Because some of the times, I know for me, I tell the people I love, let me know when I look like I'm starting to unravel. Unraveling to me, looking unorganized, looking flighty. My thoughts are all over the place. And it's sometimes my sister has to check me and be like, are you okay? Because you don't seem like you're okay. So being able to identify what behavior that the loved one is exhibiting that is a concern for you. And then asking them what they need. Don't assume what a person needs. In the Black community, we're so quick to fix, be the protector. You know, I'll come stay with you, girl. What you need from me? Like, what is it? Ask the person, what is it you need during this time? How can I help you? Is the best approach to me.
I would also add, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. I'm not a therapist. I'm a darn good coach. I'm good at what I do. But I am clear that my role as a coach is to support you with moving forward. I can't diagnose you. I can't support you around PTSD and all the things that happen in your childhood or even happened last year. So I think it's really important for us as family members, as professionals, to be clear about the lane in which we operate from. And we can always refer, suggest that they go get support from another professional, even support from another family member. But yes, I totally agree with you, Dr. D. So many times we react and we go into fix. Stay in your lane. That way you don't end up carrying around get more luggage, as Fitz talked about.
I would like to go ahead and deep dive a little bit into the adult portion of our conversation and talk about not just relationships on the surface level, but specifically sexual relationships, and how having a healthy awareness, healthy mental health helps you in sexual relationships. Can you talk about that?
Well, I can start with that. Emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy go together, and I know that's not for everyone. So it's important for me, like I said earlier, I can be that want to keep the peace, the people pleaser, but it's important for me to use my voice and speak my piece and say what I need to say. Even, and just be vulnerable with it, even if that means that there may be an argument or, we might have to hash through something, but to really just speak my truth. And it's always better on the other side. It may be an ugly road to travel, but once you get to the other side, it's always better. And the sex is amazing on the other side. So that's what I would like to add.
Dr. Steph, that was amazing, and I agree with you. sex is a lot better when some of the stresses of your life are put to the side. I could think about, say, for instance, you're married and the children are running around, and say the wife is cleaning and tending to the kids and doing all the duties of life, and the husband comes home and he doesn't participate in helping around the house and taking some of the pressure off. That intimacy is hard to really have to work through. But when the husband comes home and he participates and he's available and he begins to not just detach, but to dive into some of the needs of the household, into the children, put the children to bed, that made intimacy a whole lot better. Things flow a whole lot easier when everyone is on one accord. And I think that, the problem we find is the disconnect starts from before we leave and it finishes when you get back home. And then you want to have sex on top of that. It don't feel the same. I beg to believe.
So my response to this question is a little bit different in that when I think about mental health and its relation to sex, dealing with my own personal traumas around having been raped in the past and at a young age, and then coming into this sexual being, having to realize that my sexual proclivities were a direct result of the sexual trauma that I had incurred. And for several years, I went around thinking that my detached nature was just okay. It just was me. I had great sex. I cannot sit here and say it wasn't good. It was good. Okay. And yet I also had to then come to the point of realization. And it was through intimate partners. It was through my relationships, my committed relationships, where I started to hear them saying, like, and this was a couple of different relationships, saying that I didn't feel connected. They didn't feel like they can connect with me. At some point, I was ready to kind of, as Fitzroy talked about, open that zipper. I didn't think there was a zipper that needed to be open. And then finally, I'm like, let me open that zipper and think more about what this is holding me back from. And I can't really say that it was this dire need because my sex life was suffering. It was just that my relationships were actually suffering. And so I wanted to try to understand. And so to this very day, in full transparency, I can't wholeheartedly say that I've experienced what I hear my current boyfriend explain as making love. I still don't feel that I have had that point, that I've reached that point yet. And yet I do know that there were certain things that I was doing that no longer serve me because I'm working through and releasing the hold that past trauma had on my life. So now I can experience moments of sex from a place of, well, you know what? I do want to now talk a little bit more. I'm not going to want to just jump into all the things to kind of get me right so we can get it in. Now let's try a little bit of what you like. Some of these things that are a little bit more foreign to me, like the cuddling and things to kind of get all engaged. You know, you can talk this is an adult conversation. You can talk my panties off is what I used to say. However, getting into a space where just holding each other and feeling that energy, it's newer to me. And I'm starting to learn, hey, I can get aroused in this way and enjoy it as well. So that's how sex and mental health have played out in my life. And thankfully, like I've said a couple of times on this platform, it has me doing that work a few years back, starting the work a few years back, rather, because I'm still doing it, has then helped me when clients have come to me and they're kind of I call it the him and Han phase, not as an insult, just kind of like, yeah, I don't really know. I can see and hear and ask particular questions then to help them see where they may be at. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't pay attention inward first.
I just want to thank you, Denise, for your vulnerability. I think that is, just you are so strong. And, I know a lot of women are encountering or have been through things like that. And I would also say, look at your introduction. How were you introduced to sex? Because oftentimes that will set the pattern and precedence for all the other relationships in your life. And if you were introduced in a traumatic way, it may be the reason why you respond in different ways when it comes to sex and sexual behavior. And so I would just say, really speak to your therapist about your introduction to this and what certain things trigger you when it comes to the topic of sex in order to have a more healthier sex life. So.
I want to, you all made valid points. And when it comes to sexual intimacy and a vulnerability with a partner, in terms of mental health, when you cannot be sexual, right? It's some days where you're not okay. Hence, it won't translate in bed. So what I'm going to give you, you're not going to like. So let me tell you, just being honest, I'm not okay. And for men too, because I've dated a lot of men who've had diagnoses and they cannot perform when they're not okay. And not chastising them, not being upset. But how can we be intimate and it's not sexual? Like you say, Denise, Coach Denise, being intimate on that level, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Okay, we can't have sex today, but what can we do to still be intimate?
And also too, learning the love language of your partner as well. I think that's important. And I think a lot of times, especially speaking from the man's point of view, a lot of times we don't listen for the love language of our partner. And we go on brute strength. And we miss it so many times. And it can really take an experience from being good, decent to amazing just by listening to the small cues, the subtle sounds, the shifts in some of the ways that you have to be in the moment. And I'm sure I've been guilty of that. But even as I try to process my own mental health and my own awareness, I have to be honest and say, okay, Fitz, slow down and let the moment happen. You are not the moment, sir. Let the moment happen. And I think, that's a healthy way for I approach it as well.
There's another tweetable. You are not the moment. I am the moment. Look, you all, those of you who really know me well, I could talk about sex all day, all night. But I'd like to change the subject just a little bit because there's something that I'm hearing a lot in my work as a coach. And I imagine the other coaches on the panel are hearing the same thing as well as the rest of you. And that is around this pandemic and specifically, most currently, returning to work. So a lot of these companies are, yes, Denise, a lot of these companies are starting to put out policies and put out announcements saying, hey, prepare yourselves, brace yourselves, because y'all going back in the brick and mortar building come the day after Labor Day or the first business day after Labor Day. And I would love for you all just to share, what you're hearing and, from a therapist point of view and from a medical point of view, how are you supporting people around that?
So advocacy is always something that I am a huge supporter of. And in terms of coaching around this, it's really helping people to identify what it is that is impacting them, how it's impacting them, and then how to communicate that to where they feel that they put out exactly what they mean and hope, because it's policy based, sometimes it's not always going to go in the way that you had hoped. However, that's the first direction. Advocacy to see what provisions can be made for you. Just because it's written doesn't mean that it applies 100% across the board for you. get your need met. A thing that I say all the time is closed mouths don't get fed. I live by it, breathe by it. And so it starts there. Then for the things that can't be changed, what is it that you are going to do to help yourself feel okay with whatever's happening? What do you need? Yeah, that question, I'll be honest, Coach Sophia, that hit hard because I also have been impacted by the return to office, and we have already had to come back to the office in my day job, I call it. So that's a hard one. And so talking to clients, talking to colleagues, it's get your needs met.
Well, first, I want to thank God because I started Vitality in 2019. And when I tell you all, my last day working for the government, aka the man, was on March 13th when it was declared a pandemic. Little did I know that the world was just about to change. And here we are. So I can honestly say I don't have to deal with that personally. However, a lot of my clients do have to deal with that. And I agree, Denise, advocating for yourself is very important. However, as a fellow program manager, you can advocate all day, but the policies are the policies. So here we are. And what are we going to do? So what I wanted to educate clients on, for people who are listening, understanding what fears you have going back into the office. Because this pandemic has created a sense of fear for a lot of us. And it makes us feel unsafe and not in control and all of those things. But how can we take that on into our workspaces? How are you protecting yourself, empowering them? During the course of the pandemic, I learned that wearing a mask still makes me feel safe. I don't care what the governor say, what you say, the mayor say, I still want to wear a mask. So if that's what you want to do to feel comfortable going back in your space, do that. What can we implement in addition to you going back to work to make you feel empowered enough to still feel in control of yourself in the pandemic in your workspace and navigating through that?
Yeah, this is definitely something that I'm seeing coming up a lot. A lot of people are presenting with anxiety. And as we know, the emotional and the mental and the connected. So sometimes that anxiety is showing up as chest pain or headaches or other physical symptoms around this issue of having to go back to work in a physical space. So the first thing I would say is just to acknowledge how you're feeling, acknowledge that you're experiencing anxiety, and get help with that, whatever that might be, whether that's meditation, whether that's talking to a therapist, whether that's medication. And then I'm also actually, this is such a big topic. I'm having a conversation with an HR consultant coming up about other things that people can do to advocate for themselves as they go back. A lot of people are quitting their jobs because they just refuse to go back, or they can't bring themselves to go back. And being empowered enough to be able to look at your situation and say, okay, what are my options? I feel like I tell people there's always 3 options in a situation. So one option is going back to work. Another option may be negotiating more tele time at home versus going back as much full time as you were. And another option might be choosing a different job. So really looking at all of your options and feeling empowered that way, and acknowledging and getting help with whatever those feelings are that are coming up.
I also think it's important to advocate for yourself. I'm in a unique space because I am CEO of the community-based mental health agency. So I listen to my staff. I want them to come talk to me. Let me know what's on your heart. Let me know what's on your mind, because you're an extension of who I am and who the agency is supposed to be. So if anyone is afraid to advocate, don't be afraid, because we won't know unless we do know, but we can only know if you say something. And I remember I was going through a subway in New York, and it was a slogan, if you see something, say something. So if you're feeling any particular way, advocate, bring it up, and you'll be surprised that there are more for you than they are against you.
As we are starting to wind down, I'm wondering, I would love to hear from each of you some surprising advice that you would give us and everyone watching that would help us care for our mental health.
So I probably have 50,000 things that I could offer you, but I am grateful that I don't own televisions in my house. I haven't owned televisions for years. And that was a decision that I made after my husband took ill. I'm like, I need to limit the amount of stimuli coming into my space. So I would really encourage people to think about ways that you can limit the stimuli that's coming into your space, including not just the media, but also people's energy. How can you limit that so that you can take good care of yourself? I would also encourage people to just write. I know Keisha the poet talked about that earlier, the power of journaling. Now, that's my shameless plug. See that Eastern Flow Journal? Okay. So, but yes, to actually journal. And it doesn't have to be in something like formal. It doesn't matter what it says. Sometimes I write, I journal, and if somebody else read it, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So to spend some time with yourself and make sure that you are taking care of yourself by protecting your energy. And the last thing I would offer is practice the art of saying no. No. Now I can't find my mug, but my mug that says JOMO is a reminder for me. Joy of missing out, Sophia. There's joy also available when you don't do things. And so how can you protect your space so that you're not having all these things coming at you?
I would also say understanding that humans see from their own level of perception, right? Everyone has their own specific perspective and sees the world their own way. And so a lot of times in communication and relationships, you're trying to understand this person, trying to translate what it is they're saying. And you have to understand that they may only see it from their level of perception. So for you to try to bring something to them, they only see it from their perspective. And so I think that freed me because, a lot of times I'm often trying to explain, trying to get others to understand when it's like they're only going to see and they're only going to agree with what matches already what is in their mind, what their beliefs. And so a lot of times it's okay to agree to disagree and understand, because I believe our society has become so polarized and, either you're on this side or that side, but just understanding that at the end of the day, we are all human. We all carry a sense of humanity. And I think that's what has helped me to navigate the world as well.
I'll say for me, the power of boundaries. And I share that boundaries are very much for me as they are for you. And if I set boundaries with you, it's because I care enough about you to try to preserve this relationship that I am putting these stipulations up. And in order to help me set boundaries that I really mean, I have to figure out what is being impacted, what's bothering me. What do I need for myself, no matter how people feel about it? What is it that I need for myself? And then I ask myself, what am I willing to offer up to people? Because everyone has their own needs. And then I put that out on the table. And I invite people to accept it or not. And if they can't, I love you. I thank you. And this is just where we disconnect. And it might not be across the board. It may be I'm putting up a boundary in this particular area. So this is where now, if you can't get with it, we just won't align. We can't partner in this way. However, boundaries, my friends.
I think for me, to remind people that winning is your portion. And it's okay to win at life. It's okay to be better. It's okay to grow. You deserve the best portion of life. You deserve it. And a lot of times we don't go after the best portion because we don't think we deserve it. We don't think we are worthy of the better side of life. I'm reminded that eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard, or enter into the hearts of man. So that lets me know that the very thing that you didn't even know you deserve is the things that are prepared for you and for me. And what helped me to really begin to push past where I was to tell myself, you do deserve this. You can have a better life. You can be made whole and set free, and not only go after the things, but attain the things that really are the desires of your hearts. So, more importantly than anything else, you deserve it. And that's enough.
Hi. I just wanted to say you said something surprising. So I would say normalize crying. Um, some at some points in my healing, I cried every day. I remember meeting with my therapist and my coach, and I would talk about good things and I would cry. And I asked her, am I always going to cry this much? And she said, eventually you won't cry that much, but it's okay. If you got to cry every day, cry every day. And then the other thing that I would say is that, like I talked about, we're all connected. So sometimes if you're struggling mentally, just moving your body and connecting with yourself physically can help your mental space, or doing something spiritual, having that sacred space, having your own altar or whatever it is that you do can help your mental space, or socially. So if you're struggling in one area, maybe tap into one of the other areas to kind of lift that area. So that's what I would like to add.
I agree, Dr. Stephanie. For me, it's physical wellness. That's very important to me. And I think it's underrated in the Black community because as I reflect back, I really didn't witness a lot of people working out. I didn't see it a lot. But it's very important when it comes to mental health, emotional health, all those things where I have my place where I can go. And so for me, I hate being hot, but I found solitude in hot yoga because it helped with my anxiety and my breathing techniques. It helped me control my breathing, so that's very important to me is physical wellness as well as giving myself grace when I don't do everything on my to-do list. Like, okay, we got that whole list. Oh, I'm going to do this, go to the grocery store, go happy hour, I'm going to do this. And then when we don't do one thing, it's like, oh, you done messed up, Dana. You should have did I gotta check myself sometimes. Like, okay, girl, what did you do today? Not what didn't I do? What did I do? Like going back to celebrating yourself. Well, you got that done. You did this. Oh, girl, you did something. Like, I have my check-ins with myself in the mirror sometimes. So just checking in with myself too. Going back to talking to yourself, right, Lakeisha? Hey, identifying what we need, what we did well, and what we're going to work on tomorrow.
What I hear in that is to give yourself some compassion. Compassion. And I have to remind myself, and sometimes I have to remind my clients, you are in the midst of a pandemic. You've never been here before. I don't care. I heard everybody say, well, the Spanish flu, the blah, 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 blah. But I wasn't there. We've never been in this moment right here. This is different. So how do we give ourselves some compassion?
I want to let you all know that it is time for us to wrap up. Sophia, you're talking about compassion. You have brought us all here together compassionately to discuss being vulnerable in our mental health as we take care of ourselves. Is there something that you would like to say to wrap us up?
Okay, I didn't totally hear that, but I heard my name, so I know how to wrap up a conversation. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you once again to each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Keisha the poet, thank you so much. Coach Denise, thank you. Coach Dr. Stephanie, thank you so much. Fitzroy. Fitzroy and I have a story. Like, we connected through, I just want to share this really quickly, connected through a friend. And the way that we connected and the power, I should say, of our connection is testament to the power of the marriage between therapy and coaching. Therapy and coaching, they do not have to conflict and compete. It is a wonderful partnership. It's a wonderful partnership. And I hear constantly, well, I already have a coach, so I don't need a therapist, or I have a therapist, I don't need a coach. How about being compassionate with yourself and living and dwelling in abundance to where you have an abundance of support in your village of support? Like, you can have it all, as Fitzroy said, all of it. So I just want to say thank you again, Brother Fitz, for being here. Thank you, Dr. D. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. 6 degrees of separation. I actually went to high school with Dr. D's cousin. I had never met Dr. D. The power of connection. So I just want to say thank you, each and every one of you. I want to encourage you all of you out there listening, to take great care of yourselves. Take great care of yourselves. As you've heard the panelists say, use your voice. Be compassionate with yourself. Speak out. Be an advocate for you. You know, so many times, you know, we as people of color, we are reared to take care of others by any means necessary. Put yourself first on that list. And I'm grateful. Once again, thank you, Shannon. Thank you to the Triple Pockets group. Thank you so much to all of you for making Fierce Vulnerability a Colored Girl's Truths, Trials, and Triumphs the #1 Amazon new release for dramas and plays by women. I didn't do that by myself. You did that. That's the power of community. Power of the community. Stay connected. Get connected. Don't do this separate and alone. We have been told a lie that we got to compete with each other and do this, take this journey by ourselves. It's a lie. And the devil is a liar. It's a lie. Get supported. Each and every one of these panelists are happy to support you. And if it can't be them, then they're happy to connect you with someone else. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.